This is Delta Tango Mike, and I want to share with you my sticker design process for I Like to Draw. As you can see, this is a quick little sketch that I started in Procreate. I have an iPad, a Surface Duo, Surface Pro, a tablet, a Samsung tablet. I have different devices, and I'll grab whatever I need to just get the idea out. And here with Procreate, I kind of just played around with the figure enough to where I am happy to move on to the next step, which is to bring it into Adobe Fresco. So here I am wrapping up the details in Procreate, and then boom, let's get Adobe Fresco. I start with a canvas that's 1080 by 1920 and organize that saved image from Procreate, bring it into Fresco, turn down the opacity in one of the layers, and then boom, start the next layer with vector brushes. It does take me a second to play around with the brush settings so I can get the lines that I want. I don't have set brush settings that I keep because I draw with a lot of different art styles, and so my brushes are never the same in every drawing. So sometimes I have to play around to get the brush that I want. And here we go. We got my vector brushes. I'm doing all my outline and cleaning up the design. I don't follow every sketch to vector faithfully. Sometimes I just make it up as I go. Sometimes I go in and I realize, I'd rather do this than that. And so there will be a lot of adjustments in my sketches when I get to the vector part. And in this case, I like Adobe Fresco for the vector brushes so that I can then use this design as a sticker, as a poster, as any kind of print design that I want. And it doesn't matter the size that I printed in, because it's going to keep, those vector brushes are going to keep the drawing clean and sharp no matter the size. I love wearing sweatshirts, so we're definitely going to put on a hoodie. Gonna add some Azteca Moderno details. So that's why we have that piece by the hat, those pieces on the wrist. There you go. And I do like the fact that you can draw a circle, hold the pen on the screen for a second or two, and then that circle will be a perfect circle. Here we go with the gloves. Got a glove on each hand, and I like to just go ahead and start drawing. Sometimes I will go in and draw some of those elements. So I try not to spend a lot of time figuring out whether I like this line or do I need to draw another line. I don't want to spend a lot of time when I'm first drawing it out. I want to just go ahead and get the drawing down and work on as many layers as possible. That belt and that pencil are on a different layer. And there you go. See, I can move the layer around to get the angle that I want from that belt. More layers, more control, and get as much as a design drawn out before I start editing. And there's a lot of sketching going on here. A lot of sketching, a lot of drawing, a lot of line work, a lot of layers. Get the fingers out. Some of these lines, what you can do when it comes to vector brushes is, if a line crosses over another line, that crossed over part, you can get rid of the parts that you don't want once it crosses each other by using that touch modifier, double clicking it, and then the brush turns to a eraser of some kind where it gets rid of that corner. You can see that in the elbow. It just happened, and it's going to happen right here under the arm, and then that shoulder. We're going to have, so there's the touch modifier working. You can see that blue circle on the top left, and it's slowly building out the character. And I did have a little bit of trouble with the feet. At first I thought I wanted the foot facing, and that's kind of what I draw all the time. I draw one foot facing the front and another foot off to the side, but with this pose I wanted to show that he is standing there facing off against an opponent of some kind, because the trick about I like to draw is it's a funny phrase. When you have a pencil and you like to draw as in drawing with a pencil, but you also like to draw like in a duel, you know, drawing your guns. But in this case, and in most of my drawings, we don't draw guns, we draw pencils. And so I'm playing around with the legs, getting the legs right so that they match the body. I want him to have his knees bent a little so that it looks like he's ready to spring to action with the pencil and draw his pencil out. Little details on the belt, details on the pencil holster, and then another belt that goes off onto the other side. So he's got two pencils, one on each side, and that's why he has his elbows out and hands up ready to grab one of those pencils. And sometimes, like I said, I'll go ahead and start the sketch and drawing in one layer, and then just to get that idea out and maybe play around with the size, with the position and composition of the drawing, and then I turn down the opacity for that layer, make a new layer, and then redraw what I just drew, much nicer, neater, cleaner, and now I have an idea what I want. And in this case, I want to keep the brush strokes similar throughout the drawing. So sometimes as I'm playing around with the idea, just trying to get the idea out, the brush strokes are different sizes and maybe too thick, and it starts to get lost in trying to figure out the composition to a point where it's okay if I just redraw it again, but this time I pay attention to the strokes versus paying attention to the composition. So now I'm cleaning up the belt, adding the details to that belt, and now I can clean off the parts of that leg that I don't want, that are under the belt, the parts of the leg on this side that is under the pencil holster, and slowly move across the rest of the drawing. And you can see the faded opacity of the layer underneath. That was the original legs that I sketched out, and there I'm organizing my layers. Sometimes I do combine some of the pieces together, clean up that foot, boom, yep, clean up the leg because I didn't like it, and now just shade in some of the parts where there's just going to be no light, and it adds a little bit of extra volume to the drawing. Fixing the shoes, the top of the pants, the part of the pants that drops over the top of the shoes. And of course, now cleaning up the name tag on the hat, readjust the position and add in some text. I like to draw is the theme of this sticker. I want some cool fonts, some cool text to be right behind his head. So the great thing about Adobe Fresco is that it allows you access to fonts and text edits. And boom, now we moved on past that onto the next layer that I duplicate the line work layer, turn down the opacity, and then add extra details to that layer that gives me the shapes for the shadows. I don't redraw a whole nother layer, not all the time, and at least this time around. I don't need to redraw a whole nother layer to do the details, the shadows. I can just use a copy of the same layer, the line work layer, duplicate that, and then boom, start working on those shadows. I like to add a lot of details during the shadow layer so that it can give that drawing a bit of volume, separate certain things, and highlight certain parts of the pose so that we have a sense of where the light is coming from. One of the things to keep in mind is that when you're drawing and you're adding shadows or highlights, you have to consider where is your light source. And sometimes the best way to add those details to the character is to add shadows opposite of where the light source is. And then there's going to be some shadows from the area of the body that's further away from you. In this case with Adobe Fresco, we do not have gradients. So a lot of the details have to be done in a flat layer However, when we export to Illustrator, we can add a lot more to it. I won't do it this time around because I really want a simple sticker design, but I end up going back through some of my drawings and then adding a little bit of gradients for the nose, for the ears, for the cheeks, and even the clothing. You kind of want to break up the solid colors sometimes. And there we go. We got the shadows, which then gives us where the light is coming from. And in this case, boom, we add a background and clean up some of the colors that are going through that background. So I did add one more layer where I made the whole character white. So we have a white layer for the solid, a shadow layer for the details, and then a line work layer. At this point, what I'm doing is adding, and it's kind of hard to see, adding some highlights. There goes the cheekbone. There you go. Got some highlights in the beard and highlights on the back hand, just enough to give us that volume. And so the figure itself is off-white, and then there's a white for the details over it. I try to do as many shapes as I can in Adobe Fresco with the vector brushes, because then I know that when it comes to Illustrator, I just do a bit of editing, small little things here and there, and we're done. So I like drawing and making the vectors look a little bit organic. So if they're a little crooked, if they're off, if the line weight is off, it's okay, because then that has more of an organic look than if I did all this vector work with the pen tool in Adobe Illustrator. And so just adding a bit of highlights here, there, a ground, a floor where the character is standing, and that character is me. That's me. There goes the signature. Sign it, export to Illustrator. Boom, we're in Adobe Illustrator on the iPad. Now on Fresco on the iPad, there is an export button. You click in the top right corner, the export button, and you get the drop down menu that gives you the option to export to iPad on desktop or iPad on the export to Illustrator on the iPad or Illustrator on the desktop. And so I export to Illustrator on the iPad so that I can jump right into the illustration. I like to organize my layers, so I rename some of the layers. Instead of layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, I name them the shadows. I duplicate one of the layers of the line work and then bring it to the bottom so I can give it that white stroke around, so we can have more of that sticker look, and just play around with the layers to the point where I have what I need. I change the colors on some of the elements, and this is why I like to work in as many layers as possible, so that I can have full editing control over anything that's on the screen. Save it, export it. I save it, and there it is. I'm looking at the design, and I want to add a few elements just in case, and I make various versions of the same drawing. I make a version for the sticker, I make a version for the poster, I make a version for the online just posting. I make different versions so that I can then grab what I need anytime, and every time I use an exported image, it's going to be clean and clear and sharp every time. Vector illustration, Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Fresco, start the sketch in Procreate. Since you watched this all the way to the end, there is a bonus section. That's right. So now I get to show you a bit about how Turntable on Adobe Illustrator works with my character art. So here we are in Adobe Illustrator, and I need to organize the artwork. And the first thing you need to do is grab the figure, the layers, and turn it into a group. So what I'm going to do is organize these layers so that I can have a second copy of my character, and that second copy is what I'm going to use for turntable, not the original drawing. But before I use turntable on my character, I need to clean up some of these layers, because the only way you can use turntable on your vector art if it's in a group. So the character needs to be in a group, all the layers need to be grouped together. And when you do that, you lose the gradients and the opacity and the transparency modes that you set up on individual layers. It all turns dark, like right now. There it goes, it's gone. So I need to clean this up, and the way I do it is by going over those layers that have a multiply, turn off the multiply, go to normal, turn the 100% opacity back on, and then find the color that closely matches the tone that I had on before. And I do that to all the different layers that I'm going to group together, because as soon as you group the layers together for that character, you're going to lose all the opacity, all the transparency, all the blend modes. They're going to be gone. And so I clean up, organize the layers, make a copy. Now I open up Adobe Illustrator beta. This is the beta, and I have my groups ready. I have an extra copy of my character along with a copy of the character I'm going to use for the turntable. Find the properties panel, click on the turntable, and there it goes. Adobe Illustrator is doing the work behind the scenes to turn the tables on my character. It does take a minute. You do have to wait a little while, and that's okay. Find you a cup of coffee, find you a episode on YouTube to watch for a good few minutes. It does take a while, and at least for my art, as has been the case. Of course, this is in the beta. You're gonna find this in Adobe Illustrator beta for desktop on the Mac or PC. And there it goes. It says the notification says it's saving my work as I go. But there we go. Let's zoom in and take a look at this character. There it is. And turntable slide is in the front of the screen, and no matter where I put my character, I can turn on the slide and see the different turns. What I'm doing is turning the slide a little bit, leaving a copy, turn the slide a little bit, leave a copy, go back, turn the slide a little bit, leave a copy, turn the slide a little bit, leave a copy, all the way till I have a copy of each bit of the turn. I just want to do this so I can see them. I don't want to keep clicking on the turntable too so I can slide it, the character into different turns. I want to be able to see it right then and there on the screen. So there we go. We line them up. I am going to make some artboards for each one of these characters so that I can then export them. So select them, organize them, and make sure that they are, there you go, that's my guy. Make sure that they are aligned, and take a look at him. He looks cool. There is a bit of extra details that are not necessarily belong there. Look at that face. The face is a little tripped out. It's trying, and I think this is really a play on what Adobe Firefly does. I don't think that we have any other options for other models to create the turntable figures. And as you can see, I moved the back a little bit, the back of that jacket, the sweatshirt, and it was a solid shape. So there are some things that are still getting worked out in beta. Not sure when it will make, the turntable will make it to the general release, but it's still good enough for my purposes. My purposes are going to be to just help me generate a change of pose, right? Take a pose that I have, turn it a little bit, boom, that's a new pose. I may not use the turntable version, but I will grab that pose and then use it as a basis to recreate that drawing with that new pose in mind. And that kind of just helps me do the in-between work. Instead of me sitting there playing with the pose, trying to get that pose right with it from a different angle, I will go ahead and use Adobe Illustrator. Now right now I did the poses going around straight from side to side. There is another option. I did not touch on this, but it's in the same menu, little pop-up window where the slider is, and you can rotate your character up or down. So you can look at them from the top, look at the character from the bottom, and still rotate it. So the possibilities are endless for a character artist like myself. I can see myself using it for when I need to change my pose, when I get that matrix effect going on in my animations or in a comic book. And it's really a great tool for character artists. Let me know in the comments if you have tried Turntable. What have you tried it with? What the results look like to you? And do you see yourself using this in the future? Please shoot me your questions, comments, suggestions anytime, and join us in the Discord where you can come on through, hang out with us in our drawing sessions, tutorials, demos, and art live streams where I share a lot of my creative process, like this one today, where we start with a sketch, end up with a vector, and eventually take this artwork from the screen onto the real world in apparel, merchandise, stickers, and anything else you want. Thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope this process is helpful in your art projects, and I will catch you on the flip side. What's up, DTM? I like to draw. That's right.